The dense forest was filled with shadows and whispering winds as Björn moved stealthily among the trees. He had been following her for days, this woman who was unlike any other. He had seen how she moved among the trees, as if they obeyed her, how she sometimes disappeared into a veil of morning mist and reappeared somewhere else, as if she never walked, only existed. And he knew what she was. He was not like other men. While others might have feared her, he watched with quiet fascination. He had heard the stories, the whispering warnings of men who never returned, of voices calling from the trees. He had not believed them, not entirely. Not because he didn't think such evil could exist, but because she sounded unbelievable. But still, he had wondered. He had seen the way she moved, how the forest seemed to shift around her. He had waited, studied, until the moment felt right to step forward. When she stood alone by the small forest brook, he took a step forward. "I have seen you," he said, his voice smooth and inviting, "and you have seen me." She turned toward him, her large eyes glowing like sunlight through foliage. A smile flickered across her lips, almost shy, almost human. "I thought you would come," she said, her voice soft murmur blending with the rustling leaves. The moonlight cast silver streaks across her hair, and her skin seemed to shimmer like the surface of the brook beside her. The scent of damp moss and wildflowers clung to the air between them, and for a moment the forest felt like it belonged only to the two of them. Björn had prepared for many things, but not this. Not this fragile openness in her voice, the kindness in her eyes, as if she was not the one hunting him, but the other way around. For a moment, doubt crept into him, as if he no longer remembered why he was there. She stepped closer, looking at him as if he was more than just prey, more than just a man. Her fingers brushed gently across his back, and he felt a soft, tingling movement. Not hands, but something smoother, warmer, a tail. But he did not react. He was not afraid. He was lost in her eyes, in the almost imperceptible melody of her voice, in the warmth of her touch. A hollow emptiness began to fill him, a sleepy, deep forgetfulness. "Let's take a walk," she said, and he nodded without thinking. She led him deeper into the forest, where moonlight barely touched the ground. The trees grew taller, the shadows darker. Something inside him should have cried out in protest, but it was as if he was already far away. She turned to him, and he saw only her. Everything else vanished. She smiled again, this time sadly. Her hand brushed against his cheek, and she leaned in as if to kiss him. But just as their lips were about to meet, she pulled away. "Sleep, Björn," she whispered. He fell, not like a man who stumbles, but like a tree being cut down. As he hit the ground, he saw her through a haze of exhaustion, one last time. A part of him understood what she had done. The second time they met, she was bathing in a moonlit lake, her silhouette barely disturbing the water's surface. He had not expected to see her again, but when he stumbled upon her, it was as if the forest had led him there. She turned to him, unafraid, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "You watch me like a man who has never seen water before," she teased. He sat at the water's edge, mesmerized. "I have heard the legends, but I never believed they could be real." She laughed, a sound of rustling leaves. "And now? Now I don't know what to believe." She swam closer, close enough for him to see the droplets on her skin shimmer like stars. For a while, they just talked. Not as hunter and prey, not as man and myth, but as two souls drawn to each other. When she finally stepped from the lake, he offered her his cloak, and she took it without a word. Before she disappeared into the trees, he called after her, "Come to the cabin tomorrow. I assume you eat?" She hesitated, tilting her head as if considering. Then, with a final glance, she vanished into the woods. The third time they met, she walked willingly into his cabin, her steps light, almost hesitant. The fire cast a warm glow inside, and the scent of roasted meat filled the air. She smiled as she stepped over the threshold, feeling something unfamiliar. Was it longing? Trust? They sat across from each other at the wooden table, the fire crackling softly beside them. Björn poured her a glass of water, his movements deliberate, measured. "You don't seem like the creature they speak of in the stories," he mused, watching her carefully. She traced a fingertip along the rim of the glass, her expression unreadable. "And what do they say?" "That you lure men into the forest and leave them to die." He took a sip, his gaze steady. "That you have no heart." She chuckled, but there was no amusement in it. "Is that why you invited me here? To see if the stories were true?" He hesitated before answering. "I wanted to understand what it's like being you." She looked away, her eyes fixed on the flames. "I did not choose what I am. I did not ask for this." Björn leaned forward, his voice softer now. "Neither did I." His fingers traced the rim of his glass as he exhaled slowly. The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. Then his voice, low and steady, filled the cabin. "You know, I've been alone for as long as I can remember. Not just in the way people mean when they say they're lonely. Not in a way that can be fixed with a drink at the tavern or the company of a woman for a night. No, it's deeper than that. Like I was born separate." He let the words settle, watching her reaction. When she didn't speak, he continued. "I never had what others seem to find so easily. A place, a person, a purpose. I would watch them, Children running through the fields, men laughing by the fire, women whispering to one another with secret smiles. I would watch, and I would wonder what it's like to belong. His fingers curled slightly against the wood of the table. I tried, of course. I tried to fit myself into their world. I worked hard. I was clever. I was patient. But it never mattered. People sensed something in me. Something off. Like I wasn't truly one of them. He exhaled, shaking his head slightly, lost in the memory. At first, I thought it was in my head. That if I just tried harder, spoke softer, smiled more, they would let me in. But it never worked. And I learned, eventually, that some of us are simply meant to stand on the outside looking in. His gaze met hers then, his voice quieter. You understand that, don't you? For the first time, her expression shifted, just slightly. Something flickered in her eyes, something unguarded. You and I, we're not like them, he said, his voice barely more than a murmur. We exist in the spaces between, watching, waiting, wanting. He smiled, but not in a happy way. That's why I sought you out. That's why I followed you. I grew up hearing the stories about you, about your kind. Men spoke of you in hushed voices, warning each other like frightened children. They said you were a danger, a thing to be feared, but all I could hear was stories of a misunderstood, lonely woman. He let the words settle, then shook his head slightly. I thought, if the stories were true, if there was someone else out there wandering the edges of the world, never quite belonging, maybe we weren't so different. Maybe, just maybe, you knew what it was like. Maybe you wouldn't look at me like the others do. Silence stretched between them, long and heavy. Then, gently, he reached out, resting his hand near hers on the table, not touching, just close enough. I don't want to be alone anymore, he said, and I don't think you do either. She glanced at him, curiosity flickering across her face. You're not like the others, she said. Neither are you, he said. She exhaled, something inside her loosening, as if she wanted to believe him. What do you want to understand, she said, smiling, trying to be inviting. Björn saw his opening. He smiled, leaning in just slightly, voice full of warmth. Everything. She drew a breath again, preparing to tell all. She leaned back, felt relaxed. Her gaze flickered to the books on the table, the diagrams, the notes. There was rope by the fire, the sketches of figures moving through trees, annotations about sightings, theories about what she was. Her fingers tensed around the glass, but her expression didn't change. She did not stiffen, did not recoil. Instead, she lifted the glass to her lips and took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch between them. "You've been studying me," she said softly. Björn didn't deny it. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, as if caught in something half shameful, half exhilarating. "Well, I had to. No one knows the truth about you. Not really. The stories contradict themselves. Some say you're cruel, others that you're just lonely. Some claim you kill for sport, others that you take lovers to let them waste away." He shook his head. "I wanted to understand which was real, to get to know the real you." She tilted her head, playing at curiosity. "And what have you decided?" He leaned back slightly, studying her in return. "You're not what I expected." She let herself smile, slow and knowing. "Neither are you." She set the glass down and reached for one of the books, running her fingers across the pages as if genuinely interested. The sketches were detailed, precise. There were notes about her movements, the way she always vanished before she could be approached. Speculations about how she might manipulate the minds of men. She let out a soft, breathy laugh. "You make me sound like a ghost," she mused, tapping the edge of the page. Björn leaned forward and jokingly said, "Aren't you?" She met his gaze, unblinking, flirty. "Are you afraid of ghosts?" He hesitated. "No." "Liar," she whispered, barely loud enough to be heard. The fire crackled beside them, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Her fingers trailed idly along the table, tracing invisible patterns against the wood. She was pretending now. She knew that much. Pretending she was only intrigued, that she had not yet put together what he intended to do. "Tell me," she said, tilting her head just so, letting her hair fall over one shoulder. "How long have you been waiting for this? How long have you been out there in the dark, hoping I would notice you?" Björn exhaled through his nose, shaking his head as if laughing at himself. "Longer than I should admit." "Poor thing," she murmured, resting her chin in her hand. "You must have been so lonely." His eyes darkened, something flickering across his face, something real for just a moment. "I was." She watched him, taking in the way his jaw tightened, how his hands curled into loose fists before he forced to relax them. "And now that I'm here?" she asked, voice light, teasing. He swallowed. "Now I don't know what I want," she hummed, pleased with the answer. Let him second-guess himself. Let him hesitate. She glanced again towards the rope by the fire, and how they were neatly tucked away, The signs had been there from the start. The way he watched her, the careful way he spoke. He had not invited her here as a man invites a woman. He had done so as a hunter lays a snare, waiting for the moment when the trap would spring. She shifted in her seat, her bare foot brushing his beneath the table, intentional, unhurried. His breath hitched just slightly, and she smiled. "You look nervous, Björn," she said, voice gentle. "I'm not," he lied. She let the silence stretch again before leaning back, letting herself look unguarded, unconcerned. "Let's go for a walk," she said, reaching for her cloak. "It's such a shame to waste a night like this, don't you think?" He hesitated, and for a fraction of a second, she wondered if he would say no. She stood, stepping lightly towards the door. She did not rush. There was no need. He would follow, because they always did. And by the time he realized where she was leading him, it would be too late. She led him deep into the forest, where moonlight barely touched the ground. The trees grew tall, the shadows dark. Something inside him should have cried out in protest, but it was as if he was already far away. She turned to him, and he saw only her. Everything else vanished. She smiled again, but there was anger and sadness in her eyes. Her hand brushed against his cheek, and she leaned in as if to kiss him. But just as their lips were about to meet, she stopped. "Sleep, Björn." He fell. Not like a man who stumbles, but like a tree being cut down. As he hit the ground, he saw her through a haze of exhaustion, one last time.